Something new that we're looking at is we've been requested by some of the construction people that attend the Philippine Mining Club that they would like to have a similar event organised for them. So next year we're going to launch, it's tentatively scheduled for March the 6th of 2020, the Infrastructure and Construction Club, which there are a lot of conduits between what we do and what they do, so look forward to that. If you want to get on the membership list, just go to our website, which is on the screen there. There you go, March 6, 2020. And of course, as usual, membership is free, but that will allow you to get our mailer in your inbox and let you know who our speakers are. And I can tell you now that the list that we're looking at is terrific. So if you want to get involved, please do. As usual, that site also has its industry events, just like the Philippine Mining Club one does, which is very informative if you want to know what's going on in either of those industries, as well as the news pages, which again have all the latest news there, which you can all have a look at. A recognised figure and friend to the Philippine mining industry, Leo Dominguez, a man of many talents and responsibilities. A lawyer by training, Leo was previously a partner with Cojuangco Torres, a member firm of Baker McKenzie International, where he headed its energy, mining and infrastructure practice groups. An active member of the legal committee of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines, Leo has served as a legal advisor to the Philippine Mine Safety and Environment Association and played a key role in forming Duata, the Women in Resources Development Inc. and its pilot project, Taling Talor, turning IP grandmothers into solar engineers, which is a great initiative. And if you need any more information about that, you can go to the Duata website or ask Leo later. Where PMC and the Land Rover Club of the Philippines and the Government of India are project partners. Notably, Leo is also the CEO and principal of Oli Consulting. He is chairman of the Philippine Sweden Business Council, currently the Oli Consulting Group, and there is some of his consultants here with us today. He is spearheading the Bamboo Initiative, which had a booth at the recent FAME Manila 2019. That communicated the developments in the collaboration among DENR, DTI and the mining industry, and Leo will say a little bit more about that when he talks. Projects aside from the Oli Consulting Group and his consultants are active, highly visible in the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the PCCI, and the Philippine Sweden Business Council, as mentioned. These efforts are further strengthened through Leo's active involvement, with two organisations serving as country leader of Inactus Philippines and as a director for products and allied services under the Philippine Franchise Association, of which its fair franchising standards and codes of ethics he helped draft. Currently, Oli Consulting Group sets its sights in Mindanao. The group is positioned to be a gateway for local and international clients who operate or are seeking business opportunities in the region. The group aspires to bring the same high-level advice and strategy, finance and business development in the industries of agriculture, mining, food, beverage and packaging, infrastructure and PPPs, entertainment, media, technology, tourism, hospitality to all its clients. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you to put your hands together for Mr. Leo Dominguez, please?
Thank you, Kevin, and good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to the 52nd Philippine Mining Luncheon. Kevin mentioned the Bamboo Initiative. It's something that, as you know, we're very involved with, and I have briefed you from time to time on what's been happening. But let me say a few things about that Bamboo Initiative. We were in FAME, which is the CITEM and DTI sponsored exhibition that happens every year, where essentially producers of furniture and all kinds of products from the Philippines are exhibited. And we were in the booth there, largely supported by Secretary Ramon Lopez of the DTI. And while we did not have any products to show, what the Bamboo Initiative really wanted to message to the public was that there is a collaboration among the Department of Trade and Industry, the Philippine Bamboo Industry Development Council, the DNR, and the mining industry that have come together around bamboo. So when people would come up to me and say, well, show us your products, we want to buy products made of bamboo, I said, our booth is not about the products, we're not about manufacturing. We are about addressing the current need of the manufacturers for the supply of bamboo. While the Philippines does produce a fair bit of bamboo products that they sell locally and abroad, they have difficulty scaling up because of the absence of supply. And supply depends very heavily on farming areas. Seeing that opportunity, we have put the Bamboo Initiative together to address that problem. And how does it do it? The Bamboo Initiative makes available thousands of hectares of mined out areas and non-mining areas within the mining contract tenements for the planting of bamboo, thereby enabling the bamboo industry to grow and the supply of raw materials to increase. And that makes the Department of Trade and Industry very happy because now it can grow the bamboo industry. Now in turn, the planting of bamboo to revegetate mined out areas, plus the relevant training that the DTI will bring to the mining communities to manufacture products made out of bamboo, which incidentally will be funded by the CSR SDMB program of the mining companies. As you know, mining companies are required to spend the equivalent of 1.5% of their OPEX on social development. So that money now will be spent on activities that the Department of Trade and Industry will bring to teach the communities how to work with bamboo and then produce high-value products. So what the bamboo does is in effect create sustainable bamboo-based enterprises for the mining communities. So in a nutshell, the collaboration using bamboo reinvents mining into a social enterprise. And how does it do that? It also, with mining's contribution to the development of the bamboo growing industry. Hopefully, and as we all wanted to do from the very beginning, this will help change the conversation about responsible mining. So just stay tuned for further developments of this. We will have an opportunity to say something about the Bamboo Initiative at the AMSEC, the Philippine Mine Safety Environment Association conference in November, which I will talk about a little later. We have with us today students. Can I request the students to please stand? They are from the Adamson University and the University of the Philippines, NIGS. How many of them are you? Two? Are you, which one of you is in geology? Adamson is mining, no geology. So you're both from Adamson? So these guys are future mining engineers. I encourage you to mix around with our audience later at the networking, because somebody in here might be your employer when you graduate. And I encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, to get to know these people, because there are not very many of them around. And so, yeah, get to know them during the networking hour. The Philippine Mining Club is happy to say that it's been indirectly responsible for young people like them to have obtained employment from people in the room. So let's give them a big hand. Our patron, Ambassador Della Albert, unfortunately couldn't be with us today because she has to meet with the mayor of Baguio, the mining industry, and Diwata, and all of the the Women in Resource Development, are putting together a program to plant bougainvilleas in November in Baguio during the Mine Safety Week. I'd like to mention the presence here of the VIPs. Stephen Lloyd, I see your name here, but I'm not sure I've seen you. Stephen Lloyd, are you here? Not yet, but he's the CEO of MMD, Philippine Resource and Development Corporation. Brad Norman, certainly you're here. Executive Officer of External Affairs of Oceana Gold. Casey Crisostomo, have I seen you? He's not here yet? Okay. Casey is the Director of Corporate Communications and Marketing of TVI. The CEO and Chairman of Eraman Minerals Inc., a nickel miner in Zambales, Enrique Fernandez. Please stand, Enrique. And he has his daughter Erica, who is very involved in the planting of bamboo in their area. So please stand, Erica. You're a bambooang like me. First Secretary Economic of the Australian Embassy, Jenny McEwen. Thank you for being here. Senior Program Officer, Economic Section, Australian Embassy, Jed Sevilla. Are you here, Jed? Edgar Manaloto of the 5th Congressional District of Pangasinan. Are you here, Mr. Manaloto? Ernest Lawrence Galarraga, also of the 5th Congressional District of Pangasinan. I guess they haven't arrived yet. And of course, they should be accompanied by Dang Manawis. I'm not sure if he's here. I'd like to mention the founding chair of Sunray Power Incorporated, which is a producer of solar energy, Larry Acera, the founding chairman, and his CEO and lovely wife, Beth Acera, also of Sunray. Yes, I have 3 of my consultants here from Oli Consulting, and just let me introduce them briefly. I have Joey Camos, who's walking around. He's a banking and finance consultant. Steve Araneta, please stand. He's there. He's our consultant on government and industry alignment. And the latest person to join us to handle tourism and hospitality is Dominic Dorol. Dom, let's give him a big hand. Okay, there are events that are going to be taking place that are part of the mining industry. From the 28th to the 31st of October, we have the IMARC 6th Annual International Mining and Resources Conference. Kevin, where is this going to take place?
IMARC's in Melbourne, Australia.
Oh, it's in Melbourne. You're all invited to come to Melbourne. We have the GeoCon 2019 in November. It's the annual geological convention of geologists in the Philippines. And on the 19th to the 22nd of November, we have the 66th Annual National Mine Safety Environment Conference, or AMSEC, that will be in Baguio. It will be in its usual venue, the John Hay Trade and Cultural Center. It's 19th to the 22nd of November. It's kind of difficult to get reservations for hotels, as you know, because this is much anticipated. So if you haven't done so already, make that reservation. And on that note, I'm happy to announce that we have a lunch break. Enjoy your lunch, everyone. And since the lunch obviously is not yet near your table, let me pull out a gift certificate here to be raffled off. And it's a gift certificate that will give you a 60-minute massage with dinner buffet. I don't know what they happen at the same time. HMR, Account Executive Conrad Ivan Cruz, are you here? There you go. Come and get it. Tell us how that thing works. Okay. I have another one. And the is Rob Gould. Haven't seen you in a fair bit, Rob. Where are you?
You're not allergic to massage,
Can I repeat that? I asked Rob and I said, "Are you allergic to massages?" He says, "No, I'm not, but maybe my wife might." Another guy I haven't seen in a fair bit. Wayne Gibbon. All right. Come on, Wayne.
Thank you.
down there.
Senior Manager, Business Development and Tender of Mega Philippines Inc. Engineers and Contractors, Jennifer Alegre. Jennifer, come over.
Actually, we're three on the table.
Three?
Yeah, we want
Three of you
Yeah.
at that table?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, wow, lucky. Oh, let's go.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Jen. Let me tell you a story about a 5-year-old girl goes to her mom and says, "Mom, can you tell me where babies come from?" And the mother says, "Oh yeah, it's, Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden. They had kids, their kids had kids, and now we're here." So she goes to her dad. He says, "Dad, where do babies come from?" And the dad says, "Oh, it's a bit technical. It's called evolution. It means that we come from apes. Apes, these are monkeys." So she's distressed. This 5-year-old is so distressed. She goes to her mom and says, "Mom, you said babies come from Adam and Eve. Dad says we come from monkeys. Is Dad lying?" She says, "No, your dad's not lying. He's just talking about his side of the family." Rings the bell, huh? Okay, enjoy your lunch. Senior Vice Chairman of the House Committee on Appropriations, a position he held for 6 consecutive years. As a lawmaker, he championed for national energy independence and competitiveness through the use of clean energy at cheap and affordable prices, wavering in the advancement on the use of nuclear power as a source of cheap, reliable, and clean energy for the Philippines. He continuously keeps the issue about the use of nuclear energy alive in the social media and provides free lessons to those who interested in being educated on the facts. I got free lessons a while ago. As well as myths surrounding the BNNP by bringing these people to the nuclear power plant itself. I'm signing up. To speak to us today on the topic, assessing the viability of nuclear power in the Philippines, opportunities, challenges, and issues. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me by giving him a big hand to welcome former Congressman of Pangasinan, Mark Cojuangco.
Thank you, Leo, for that introduction. Thank you to the mining community for inviting me and having me here this afternoon. I was never able to say this before, but now I can say this already. Nuclear has saved my life. Um, I have hypertension, and I regularly go to the doctor to be checked up. I do treadmill tests, I do ECG, and all through these years with my maintenance, it has always been normal. About a month ago, I noticed that every time I exercise, I get heartburn. And so I thought it was exercise-induced heartburn. And so I called my cardiologist and he said, well, you just had the treadmill test and it's completely normal. There's nothing there. Can't see anything there. So I started taking an acid pump inhibitor, Usec. And on my 7th day of Usec, the heartburn was not getting better, it was getting worse. So I called my cardiologist and said, this isn't heartburn, there's something wrong. You better look at it. And so he recommended that I go to the nuclear lab at St. Luke's Hospital here in BGC. And that was on Monday morning. And they injected me with technetium 99M. Most probably it came from Australia, from Lucas Heights in Sydney. And that was the dose of radiation. That dose is outside. That's normal. In this room is about that, 28 CPM. In the waiting room of the nuclear lab, it was 700 because maybe some of the patients there were already dosed with their radioactive dose. So I got my first dose of radiation, and you can see 80.6 thousand CPM from 32. So I'm very highly radioactive there. And they make me rest for an hour, after which they took an image of my chest. And then after that, they made me step on a treadmill to bring my heart rate up to 85% of the limit, which I was able to do. And right after that, they injected me with a second dose of radiation. And the dose went up to 206,000 CPM. So you can see how high that dose is. Technetium 99M has a half-life of 6 hours. After the treadmill, they let me rest another 30 minutes and they took another image of my heart. And what was not detected all these years was detected. The blood flow through my heart was inadequate. And so the doctor said, you need an angiogram, and if we find blockages, you need an angioplasty, which I had on Tuesday morning. So now I feel much better. I don't huff and puff after I take a shower. I can walk up the stairs without huffing and puffing. And so maybe this technology saved my life, saved me from having a massive heart attack. This technetium 99 is produced in, well, a big chunk of it is produced in Sydney, in Lucas Heights, at the ANSTO facility, and it's exported all over the world. It is truly life-saving. Let's talk about radiation, no? So that people can get a... By the way, let's go back a few pictures. Down, a few pictures back. So after getting that, when I arrived at the hall, since that was Tuesday, I said, let's see what my radiation level is now. And I took the radiation of the hall. It's about 28 to 32. around here because radiation is everywhere. And you have it. So that's the radiation on the floor outside the hall. 32, granite has some uranium in it, so get some reading. And then I took a picture of myself. There, it's about 28, no? So I'm not radioactive anymore. You don't have to be afraid of me. Okay? Radiation, let's put it into perspective and into context. I talked to some PhD radiation experts and they tell me if you get 100 millisieverts a year of radiation, don't even worry about it. 100 millisieverts a year is 5 times the limit to nuclear workers in Europe. Is this wireless? If you eat food and drink, you'll get 3 millisieverts a year. That's just from eating and drinking. If you stand in Grand Central Station for 1 year, because of the granite and the uranium in the granite there, you'll get 400 millirem a year. If you have a single CT scan, you'll get this much. The 100 millisieverts a year, I'm telling you that you shouldn't worry about, is this big box here. If you eat a single banana, it's this little cube here from the potassium 40 in the banana. If you stand beside a running nuclear plant for an entire year, 24 hours a day, it's similar to a banana, but it's a little smaller. So that puts it in context. I'm going to show you a video now. Okay.
When we think of radioactive, contaminated places in the world, we might be thinking of Chernobyl or Fukushima, or maybe we're thinking about the Bikini Atoll, for example, where nuclear bombs have been tested. But who of us would think about places like this, a beach somewhere, a beautiful beach with tourists? This is not a place where there has been, for example, a uranium mine. You know, uranium mine tailings that are known to expose the public to additional radiation, but that will be man-made as well. But this is all natural. It is natural radiation. It is not some man-made tailing site or whatever. This is a naturally radioactive beach. This beach contains monazite sand, which again contains the radioactive element thorium, which has a half-life of 14 billion years. So the half-life of that element is about 4 times as long as the age of our planet.
So the radiation she's talking about there is 5 of these boxes. Just to give you context. So the fear of low-dose radiation is overstated, and it has paralyzed and panicked us into inaction and paralyzed us into not using the great benefits that nuclear power can give us. I want to show some. What's the next one? Next frame. Let's talk about Fukushima. After a triple meltdown, the average radiation in Fukushima is still lower than that of Seattle or Denver, because it has always been lower than Seattle or Denver. Meaning, the incident was not able to raise the average radiation in Fukushima above that of Seattle or Denver. The hottest hotspots are 8 times lower than in the video of the beach I just showed you. 0 casualties due to radiation. Nobody died, nobody was injured because of radiation. It proves containment works. And Daiichi's containment is primitive compared to that of BNPP or that of other current reactors. Next, please. There's a lot of fake news from Fukushima. Some of it circulated in the mainstream media like BBC, CNN, etc., etc. For example, this map. This map is being sold up to today as the spread of radiation across the entire Pacific Ocean. And everybody, well, most everybody swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker. But wait. But if you read it, it says NOAA, and it is a wave height map. It is the height of the waves from the tsunami. It has nothing at all to do with radiation. And yet, it was sold as the spread of deadly radiation across the Pacific Ocean. And everybody believes this. Next picture. This was sold as a burning Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Also, CNN, BBC put this picture out as a burning nuclear plant. It is the burning Cosmo refinery in Fukushima. It has nothing to do with the Daiichi nuclear power plant. This is my son and I having sushi in Namie, Fukushima, December 27 of 2018. We are eating sushi, and the radiation outside the restaurant is 32 CPM, just like it is in this room. This is the radiation I recorded on the PAL flight going to and coming from going to Tokyo from Manila and coming from Tokyo to Manila. Next, please. This is the radiation trace of a group of French high school students who visited Fukushima from Paris. If you notice the radiation spikes, the security, the X-ray machine, the flight itself, way up there, the French embassy security in Tokyo, and the hottest hotspot in Tomioka, which again, like I said, is 8 times lower than being at the beach in Guarapari. So I hope this gives you some context and perspective on what everybody is so terrorized about. Next, please. So this is a program, an Australian program, 60 minutes. Stop.
So this keeps on hovering around 3.
He has his meter. It's the same meter I have, but the setting is in millisieverts per hour. 3.219 USV per hour. But below it is the CPM. So it's 1,000 CPM. It's higher than my reading in the airplane by about 25%. How come? He's flying to a higher latitude. He's flying at a higher altitude. So he's getting more radiation. Okay, ito.
So this keeps on hovering around 3.5, 3.6. That's about 50 times the level of radiation exposure that you normally get in, say, Melbourne or Sydney.
We're exposed to radiation the whole time. You can't live anywhere on this planet without being exposed to radiation.
Professor Thomas contends there's an irrational fear when it comes to radiation. Just because we can measure it, like we did on the flight from Japan to London, it doesn't make it dangerous.
When you swim in the sea, you're exposed to uranium in the sea. Another thing that people really don't usually think about. But you can't avoid it. And your body...
And it's not killing us?
It's not killing us. If it killed us, why are we such a long-lived species? Why is it that man has evolved to live longer and longer if radiation was so deadly at these low levels? It doesn't make sense.
When nuclear power goes bad, it goes really bad.
It goes bad, but not as bad as people think. I mean, the one thing that we have learnt from both Chernobyl and Fukushima is it actually wasn't the radiation that's done the health damage to the people in the surrounding areas. It's their fear of radiation. There's been far more psychological damage than there has actually physical damage because of the two accidents.
It's not a disproportionate fear, though, is it? Because people have been killed from this.
And when you say people have been killed, the facts are basically that 28 people were killed as a result of the fire and the explosion in the Chernobyl power plant. They died very quickly from very high doses of radiation. They were mainly the firemen who were putting out the fire that resulted from the accident there. The general population around, the most important thing for them is the risk of thyroid cancer, and that's restricted to those who are very young at exposure. And actually, we haven't seen many deaths from thyroid cancer because we can actually treat thyroid cancer very effectively. So although we've had about 6,000 cases of thyroid cancer, we would predict over a long period of time, maybe 50 years, only a death rate of about 1%. Because ironically, we can treat thyroid cancer by giving very high doses of radioiodine, the very thing that caused the original cancers in low doses.
And what about Fukushima?
Fukushima, nobody has died from the radiation. People have died from being evacuated. 1,800 people were killed during the evacuation because people were running away from the reactor. And many more, of course, died in the tsunami, which is not related to Fukushima itself, but was one of the causes of the accident at Fukushima.
But from radiation poisoning?
Absolutely none. The doses were very much lower in Fukushima, so nobody has died from radiation poisoning.
Yeah. Okay, so the lady who was talking is Professor Geraldine Thomas, who is a radiation expert and an a cancer expert, epidemiologist. She started her career being anti-nuclear. She studied Chernobyl on the ground. She is the founder of the Chernobyl Tissue Bank. She recently retired from the Imperial College, and she was granted an OBE by the Queen. But she is still the head of the Chernobyl Tissue Bank. She said 26 died of first responders died, firemen putting out the fire died. How many else died? 18 more from thyroid cancer. Total death of Fukushima from 1986 until today is 46 people. The thyroid cancer in Fukushima, in Chernobyl, was totally avoidable. If the Soviet Union had then stopped the intake of milk or given the children iodine tablets, nobody would have gotten thyroid cancer. Or if the Chernobyl nuclear plant had containment, nothing would have happened. Let's say this is a nuclear plant. This glass, this Scotch glass, hawakan mo lang yan. I used to put a firecracker, but I don't want to do a firecracker in here. So I'll just leave it with the unlit Scotch glass. This is Chernobyl nuclear plant. A nuclear plant, a reactor in a warehouse. Nothing to prevent the escape of anything in the case of any untoward event. Building a nuclear plant like this is forbidden in the West. It has always been forbidden in the West since the 50s. Our BNPP and all other nuclear plants have steel containment, and concrete containment. So what happened at Chernobyl, if it had been a Western nuclear plant, nothing would have escaped. This is proven in Fukushima, of which even their containment was 60s design antiquated. Our BNPP's containment is much better than the Daiichi containment, and new nuclear plants have even better containment. So this is the nuclear industry outside of the Soviet Union, outside of the RBM case in Chernobyl, which had no containment whatsoever. Nothing. Right? Up to today, the Soviet Union is still running 11 RBMKs near Moscow, but they are phasing them out. People thought that after 1986, there were 4 RBMKs in Chernobyl. The Unit 4 was the one that had the accident. They thought that the whole thing shut down. The Units 1, 2, and 3 continued running from 1986 to the year 2000. The operators lived nearby. They went to work every day. And that gives more perspective on what happened there. The HBO miniseries dramatized the events at Chernobyl. The helicopter never crashed because of radiation. The helicopter crashed 2 months after the incident. Its rotor blade hit a chain which was dangling from a crane, and that's why it crashed. The baby did not die of radiation. The 2 people that went into the tunnel to open the valves, in the movie they died. In real life, they are still working for Rosatom up to today. So we need to separate dramatization from fact and reality. Next, please. Chernobyl explosion zone is now home to the most diverse and prolific wildlife preserve in Europe. The animals there are really healthy. Those few hundred that refuse to be relocated are much healthier, happier, and live longer than their peers with the same social standing elsewhere in Europe. This is a fact. The tens of thousands of liquidators who helped with the cleanup at Chernobyl have cancer rates that are 1/3 lower than people who have chosen to live in large cities. The cancer risk from living in Manila is greater than the cancer risk that happened to the liquidators at Chernobyl. Think about that. This is because pollution is a much more potent carcinogen than low-dose radiation. Next. This is a WHO sourced document, and it's sourced also by other notable, credible organizations like the Lancet of England. The most lethal kind of energy is coal because of pollution, then oil, then natural gas, then hydro, solar, wind, and the lowest lethality including Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and Fukushima, is nuclear. If we exclude Chernobyl from this graph because you accept what I explained, that it had no containment, nuclear would read 0 over a 60-plus year history. I challenge you to name me an industry that can boast of that kind of safety record. There is none. Nuclear saves lives. By implication, the nuclear energy that replaced the coal energy here, since the inception of nuclear power, has already saved 2 million lives. Why should we not want a technology, an energy technology, that saves lives? Next, please. So why nuclear? People forget the physical reality which makes nuclear so magical. And what is that? The energy density of uranium. It is tens of millions of times more energy dense than coal, gasoline, fat, sugar. It's in a different class. And in nuclear, there is no combustion. Nothing burns. There's no smoke, there's no CO2, there's no pollution, there's no dust, there's just heat evolved from the reaction. Take for example BNPP, 620 megawatts. If it were a coal plant, I used 18 months as my interval because a nuclear plant is refueled only once every 18 months. If it were a coal plant, I would need 51 Panamax-size bulk carriers full of coal delivering to my coal plant. That's about 3 bulk carriers a month. If there is any reason that the delivery cannot be made, power will stop. If you remember when oil hit $100+ a barrel, there was big competition for bottoms in Southeast Asia. China was trying to outbid everybody else, and they had the capacity to pay. The cost of transporting the coal was worth more than the coal inside the vessel. And at that time, if you remember, it was in the news. And you felt it, the power prices spiked. So 51 loads, 50,000 metric tons capacity, each load, that's 3 a month for 18 months. If it were nuclear fuel assembly, 1 Isuzu Elf worth of nuclear fuel assemblies once every 18 months. I don't need the entire shipping infrastructure to run my nuclear plant. I don't need the trucks to haul the coal. I don't need to haul the coal ash. All this translates to foreign exchange savings. Where are we? Next, please. So the economy, potential for half-price electricity with a large enough fleet. Half-price electricity will spur direct foreign and local investment, creating millions of jobs. Just as an aside, the wholesale price of electricity from nuclear plants in Korea, they have 23 nuclear plants with half our population, is 4 US cents per kilowatt hour. That's a little over 2 pesos per kilowatt hour. Could you imagine with our economy, were it incrementally 1% larger in GDP for each year over the last 30 years if electricity were cheaper and more reliable? I think that's an easy sell. It implies that that our economy today should be at least 30% bigger, which means millions of more jobs. Is it only 1% incremental opportunity loss because electricity was too expensive or in short supply during the brownout years? I think it's more. We have suffered economic opportunity losses by not having cheap, abundant, and reliable electricity for such a long time. Why not have it beginning now? With high per capita consumption, all other charges such as transmission can be reduced. If you pass twice as much electricity over the transmission line, if you halve the price, the revenue is still the same. I mean, that has to be looked at. Every gigawatt of nuclear avoids the importation of $750 million worth of coal or gas every year for the life of the plant, which should be 80 years. NEDA says we need to double our generating capacity by 2030. My question to you is, that's wrong. Anyway, my question to you is, will it be more of the same, coal and gas? Or are we gonna try something new? Something that will save us if we had 10 gigawatt-sized nuclear plants, $7 billion a year in avoided coal and gas importation. Think about what it does for our balance of trade. Our balance of trade is what? $41 billion deficit at the moment. This takes a big chunk out of that. Imagine if the entire electricity network were nuclear. When Japan closed its nuclear plants after Fukushima, its coal and gas bill increased incrementally by $30 billion a year. 7 years have passed. That's $210 billion. Empowerment, especially of women. Cheap electricity empowers especially women. Running water, a washing machine, a refrigerator. These things will liberate the poor women in the countryside. Next. Environment. I do not claim to be an environmental champion, but those I've listened to seem to focus on wanting lower greenhouse gas emissions such as CO2. Each gigawatt of coal power consumes 2.7 million tons of coal a year. When burned, this becomes approximately 9 million tons of CO2 and hundreds of thousands of tons of particulate matter, pollution which is spewed into the air for us to breathe, and also coal ash which contains heavy metals like mercury, lead, cadmium, and radioactive substances such as uranium, thorium, and radium. It is why Stephen Chu, Nobel Prize winner in physics, Secretary of Energy under the Obama administration, said that coal is my problem. It is 100 times more radioactive than nuclear power plants. It is the quickest way to decarbonize. Nuclear energy is. Next, please. This is France, which decarbonized in how many years? 15 years? Completely decarbonized. There's 75%. The cleanest power in Europe is France. One of the cheapest power in Europe too. Next, please. The quickest to decarbonize. They keep saying solar and wind is the quickest. No, nuclear is the quickest. Next, please. Comparison between Germany and France. Germany has stagnated at about 450 grams CO2 per kilowatt hour. They can't get any lower, no matter what they do. And they've already spent around $500 billion trying to do this. Germany is rich, they can squander it. Can a poor country like the Philippines squander it? We cannot. Nuclear is the cheapest way to decarbonize. Compare China's recently opened 2 EPRs in Taishan nuclear plant, which is just a few months ago, which is 30 minutes south of Hong Kong. 2 by 750 megawatts, 3,500 megawatts by 24 hours a day, by 365 days a year, by 92% capacity factor, 28.21 terawatt hours a year. Total cost using Britain's inflated HPC, it's actually half the price in China. Numbers at $25 billion. Delayed, but it took 10 years to operate. Compared to all of Australia's wind and solar. Wind, 16.2 terawatt hours in 2018. Solar, 11.7 terawatt hours in 2018. Total 27.9 terawatt hours compared to 28. Total cost, $41 billion. More than 10 years to build. And in spite of spending that much money, it's intermittent. You need to back it up with gas. You need a second investment of backup capacity for when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow. Next, please. No country has successfully decarbonized with wind or solar. The only successful decarbonizations in the world have been with hydro or nuclear and hydro, not with wind and solar. Next, please. The difference in cleanliness between nuclear France and energy wind and solar Germany, which is still opening coal plants to support its intermittent wind and solar. Next. Is that it? That's it. So I have much more to talk about. You know, I wrote some topics here. What can I talk about? Nuclear waste, SMRs, floating nuclear plants, uranium abundance, ocean uranium, thorium, weapons. So many topics, so many questions. There's no way I can talk about it in 30 minutes. I leave it to you in the Q&A. I'll try to address whatever you might want to ask. I hope I've opened your eyes a little bit today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cojuangco. Very enlightening. We're going to have the next speaker, and then hopefully we will have the Q&A at the same. Before joining the government, he was SVP for Legal Affairs of Rapu Minerals, Assistant Vice President, Legal and Deputy Counsel for the Philippine Associated Smelting and Refining Corporation, PASAR, and Manager of the Legal Services Department of Eastern Telecoms. He was an associate of the law firm Sisip Salazar. He was also founding partner of Tolosa, Romulo, Agabin, Flores, and Enriquez Law Office. He joined the DOF in 2016, soon after the current President Duterte and his cabinet took office. His key responsibilities in the DOF are to provide legal advice and opinions on the domestic and international aspects of finance, taxes, customs, and tariff within the DOF, as well as its bureaus and other attached agencies. He also provides legal affairs support on matters of key strategic, financial, and reputational importance to the Department of Finance. He ensures that the highest standard of governance, risk management, and compliance with law, policy, and regulations are observed at all times. To speak to us on the topic, Forging New Frontiers, the fifth Philippine Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and join me welcome our guest speaker, the Undersecretary for Legal Services Group of the Department of Finance, Attorney Bayani Agabin.
Good afternoon. I'm glad I was able to catch the portion of Congressman Cojuangco's presentation. You know, I've met with him a couple of times about nuclear power in the Philippines, and he's always made a very compelling case on the benefits of nuclear power. In fact, I was offering to Leo, you know, we can, if you want, we can offer the whole time for Congressman Cojuangco to speak on that. But I realized that my task is more difficult because from a very spirited presentation, what I'll present to you are numbers, charts, and tables. Okay, so I hope you bear with me. Before I start, I'd like to recognize a few VIPs in the audience today. Stephen Lloyd, the CEO of MMMD Philippine Resources and Development Corporation. Brad Norman, who's a colleague in the EITI, Executive Officer for External Affairs of Oceana Gold. Casey Crisostomo, Director, Corporate Communications and Marketing of TVI. Enrique Fernandez, CEO of Eramen Minerals. Jenny McEwin, First Secretary, Economic, Australian Embassy, Manila. Jed Sevilla, Senior Program Officer, Economic Section of the Australian Embassy, Manila. Edgar Manaloto, Congressman Manaloto of the 5th Congressional District of Pangasinan. Congressman Galiaga, also of the 5th Congressional District of Pangasinan. And Congressman Manois, also of the 5th Congressional District of Pangasinan. It's a pleasure to be, it's an honor and a pleasure to have been invited in today's meeting. And what I'll present today is the what EITI is, what it does, and the value of it in promoting responsible mining. Before I start, okay. So before I discuss what EITI does, I'll go through very briefly the history, objectives, and programs of EITI. Okay. EITI essentially is an international initiative that promotes transparency in extractives. There is what we call an extractive standards, and it requires extractive industries, essentially mining, oil and gas, to publish what they pay. Okay, in effect, government publishes what mining companies pay to them, and the mining companies in turn also publish what they pay. We do a reconciliation of this so that all incomes are accounted for. And a brief history. Okay. Internationally, EITI dates back to early 2000. But here in the Philippines, we traced our origins from EO 79 around 2012 and EO 147 2013. It is governed by a multi-stakeholder group chaired by the DOF, and it's composed of government, industry, and the civil society. Okay. You see the bodies of the government represented there. It's the DOF, of which we are the focal person. Industry, which is ably supported by the Chamber of Mines and the Petroleum Association of the Philippines. And we also engage Bantay Kita, which is Publish What You Pay. By way of anecdote, although I was not there at that time, when they were starting, there was a healthy tension, especially between the industry and civil society. I understand that they used to have lively debates, but I came in on its maybe 5th year, and they've more or less settled, and you can see the spirit of cooperation between all parties involved. Our objectives are fivefold, which is to show the direct and indirect contribution of the extractives to the economy, increase public understanding of the management of natural resources and public accessibility to data. One criticism of the extractives is that they do not really disclose what they earn, and the impression is that they tend to earn heaps and bucks of money. Through EITI, we are able to to show and increase the credibility of industry, and civil society is also able to confirm that everything is accounted for. We have two other goals, which is to create opportunities for dialogue, which is why we have a tripartite representation, and to pursue and strengthen contribution of extractive industries for sustainable development. Our core programs is composed of two. We report and research on policy reform, the main output being the annual country report, and outreach and capacity building. So we go on workshops, we share the work of VITI, and this helps communities, especially local governments, understand the benefits that they're able to get from mining. Okay. Now, going through some milestones, and I'll go very quickly on this. To the past 5 years, we've published 5 country reports covering 6 fiscal years. We've covered oil and gas mining. We have reconciled around 240 billion in revenues and around 13.1 billion in social and environmental expenditures. We have an open portal of more than 400 extractives, and we have ongoing studies. We've also, in the field of report, research, and policy reforms, we have institutionalized EITI. In fact, it is part of the Philippine Development Plan for 2017 to 2022. We've been able to convince the DNR to issue an administrative order requiring all mining contractors to participate in reporting to EITI. The last bullet, and we're quite proud of that, is that we have an online reporting tool. This means the extractives, instead of submitting paper reports, they can submit it online. In the field of outreach and capacity building, we've had 6 national conferences. We have had 5 nationwide roadshows, and we've done 8 mine and mining visits. These visits are very helpful, especially for the civil society organizations, and it's also very helpful for the industry because at least CSOs are able to see what goes on in the operations of mining companies. This last slide, actually, I've asked to be removed, but it's actually it's quite important because that was the occasion where EITI got accredited as being compliant towards the EITI standard. There is a very strict confirmation process by the EITI International Board, and we were the first country out of 50 to have complied with the EITI standard. Okay. Now, that's a brief history of EITI. I will now discuss with you the key findings of the 5th report for the fiscal year 2017. Some of the key findings, with respect to the scope and coverage, we covered 63 projects. The 5th report covered 63 projects, 5 oil and gas companies, and the top 20 non-metallic mining projects, and 38 metallic mining projects. We were trying to get data on small-scale mining, but it's a different field altogether, and so we'll have to settle for this in the meantime. But this is quite an achievement because we've covered the top 20 in terms of sales of the non-metallic mines and oil and gas. With respect to the scope and coverage, I'd just like to highlight a few items. The item in yellow would the item in yellow compares the 5th report with respect to the other reports we've done. If you will look at the number of total reporting companies, we've managed to double the scope of the report from 36 to 63. Okay, we've also managed to increased the scope with respect to non-metallic mines from 4 to 20. So that gives you an idea of the additional volume that the EITA has had to exert with respect to its fifth report. Sorry. I just also like to point out that the number of reporting agencies, these are the government agencies involved. There are 7, and that's composed of 3 agencies, three bureaus under us: the Bureau of Customs, Bureau of Internal Revenue, BLGF. DOE also reports to EITI, DNR, MGB, DBM, and NCIP. The negative value here, which is negative 102, indicates that companies reported more than what the government agency reported. Now, this has been a concern for us in EITI, and for more fundamental reasons that have to do with the very nature of the revenue that pertains to NCIP, which is the IP royalty. By law, companies pay the royalties directly to the IP organizations and not to or through NCIP. And so this makes monitoring of the royalty payments quite challenging. Now, with respect to reconciled revenues, 46% of that was collected by the Department of Energy, and that's the oil and gas sector. And the next is the BAR, which reported a 45% the revenue. Next are the Bureau of Customs, local government units, and the MGB. At the local level, most of the revenues are reported at the Caraga region. And I guess this is explained by all the nickel mines located there. Next is Region 3. Again, I think mostly the nickel mines in that area. Followed by Region 2, and the rest are quite minimal. Now, who contributes the most to revenues? It's oil and gas at 72.4%, followed by the metallic sector at 19.9%, and the non-metallic sector at 7.8%. Now, if you're interested to know which companies in each sector had the highest total reconciled payments, these are the top paying companies per sector. We have Taganito, Philex, and Oceana. For non-metallic, it's Iga Cement, Northern Cement, and Republic Cement in that order. For oil and gas, it's Shell Philippines, Chevron, and PNOC EDC. PNOC EC. Now, going to the non-fiscal contributions of extractive industries. The 2017 direct employment, you will see, is 203,000 only. But I think that is with respect to the direct employment only. But as you all know, there is a multiplier effect for mining, which is, I think the rule of thumb is, for every job generated directly, there are around 5 jobs that's generated. So that figure, you can probably compute by, multiply by 5, and so you will get a lot of the indirect jobs that would have been generated by mining sector. And if you can check the full report, which is available online, we have data that is disaggregated according to gender and ethnicity, whether it's IP or otherwise, whether it's local or foreign. And the direct employment data is even broken down according to type of employment, whether it's regular or contractual. Now, for the social and environmental expenditures, they happen to report that to EIT as well. Okay. This slide will show the reconciled data for mining companies totaling to 2.073 billion. And bulk of this figure comes from the annual EPEP of around 1.226 billion, followed by the SDMP, which contributes around 31% or 645 billion. As you may have noticed, what I presented so far are numerical figures. This is because transparency in the EITI framework consists to a large extent in fiscal and financial disclosures. But this is certainly not all there is to the fifth report. There are other aspects of the extractive industries that we wish to look at. And as I said it earlier, we want more transparency with respect to artisanal or small-scale mining and the emerging concern on beneficial ownership of extractive industries. In the fifth report, we've attempted to shed some light on these topics through special chapters featuring pilot reports on small-scale gold mining in South Cotabato, in Mindanao, and on beneficial ownership disclosure, which Oceana Gold gladly volunteered by filling out the declaration form. The EITI standard defines beneficial ownership in respect of the company as the natural persons who directly or indirectly ultimately owns or controls the corporate entity. The standard requires beneficial ownership disclosure because ending company anonymity by publishing information about company's beneficial owners is seen to help deter corruption, tax evasion, money laundering, and other illicit financial flows. Unfortunately, I do not have enough time to discuss this in detail, and so I invite you to have a look at the pilot studies of the full report. And since I am on my 28th slide, and there's more information that I can share with you, the country report is a comprehensive document, and what I've shown you so far is just a sampling of the wealth of information that the report contains. So if I suggest that if you're interested, go to our website. It's the PHEITI website for the full report. What else do we have? We also have updates on the 2019 EITI standard, which was approved during the 43rd board meeting in Paris. Will be environmental reporting, contract transparency, gender, and systematic disclosures. Briefly, on environmental reporting, EITI now requires environmental payments made by companies to government to be disclosed. It further encourages that information related to environmental impact and monitoring be likewise disclosed. Fortunately for PHEITI, this is already included since it's a mandatory expenditure under the EPEP. On contract transparency, the new standard simply requires the disclosure and publication of contracts, as contracts are seen as important in understanding the fiscal terms of the project. So, thank you. That's the report. And again, if you're interested, the full report is available at the website. Thank you.
Any questions right now from the floor? Yes, sir. Mr. Dimmel. Tell us who it's for, by the way.
My question is for Mr. Agabin. Sir, you mentioned some of the additional requirements that were just passed in the last EITI meeting earlier this year. And I noticed that one of them, as you briefly mentioned, is gender. And I noticed that there is a downloadable guidance for the gender information that will be required. And I note that it's quite comprehensive. Now, for most mining companies, I know that a lot of them, especially if they report under GRI, in the GRI context, that one of the requirements is to give disaggregated gender information. But are you planning to perhaps have some courses, training courses to mining companies on how they're supposed to report on the gender issues?
Okay, thankfully I bought the EITI National Coordinator, Attorney Carla Espinosa, and she can reply to that, I'm sure.
Thank you, Usec. To answer the question, the gender requirement is relatively new, sir. And the Philippine EITI, of course, will be complying with the requirement. The fortunate thing is we already started with the gender disaggregation. The training, if the question of whether we're going to have a training would probably, for mining companies, would probably come after the MSG or the multi-stakeholder group further defines its gender agenda beyond complying with the requirements. But it may interest you to know that earlier this year, we did a scoping study where we requested data from companies. So we sent out a survey. It's a questionnaire, a pretty lengthy survey. But we only requested for it was voluntary in general. And out of the 35 companies that we sent the questionnaire to, 17 replied with their employment-related data. Some of the questions covered in that survey had to do with how many male and female employees there were, what were the positions they occupied, specific job descriptions within the company, what were the benefits that women employees were receiving, whether the company complied with mandatory laws pertaining to women's rights, for instance, pertaining to sexual harassment or the maternal leave benefits, etc. So the results of that survey would be in a study to be published, I think in a few months, and that would probably be a good start to a gender audit tool in the future. That, of course, before we deploy to our participating mining companies, we will certainly have a training on. So, thank you.
Thank you. Another question. I have a question for the congressman. Congressman Cojuangco, in the little lecture you were giving me at the table, you mentioned that you had filed a bill during your term in relation to the Bataan nuclear power plant, and that was to commission it. Can you talk to us a little about that? Because when we say ready to commission, does it really mean to say that you could just flick the switch and it'll run, or do we need to do other things?
Yeah, Bataan is a 100% complete nuclear power plant. In March of 1984, it completed its hot functional testing. The reactor was loaded with electric heating elements. It was heated up, steam was generated in the steam generators. The turbines were made to turn. Power was generated, about 5 megawatts on and off for several months to test every system in the plant. After that, the IAEA sends an OSAR-2 mission to check if the plant, the personnel, the organization is ready to run the nuclear plant. It's called an OSAR-2 mission. And in May of 1985, the BNPP passed all the tests, and it was subsequently certified by the IAEA as ready for core loading at the International Atomic Energy Agency. And if you read the book of Velasco, his memoirs, he was quarreling with then President Marcos that they should already load the fuel and run the plant. But at that time, Marcos was playing politics with Ambassador Stephen Bosworth for various reasons, too long to get into here. Let me just say that there is precedent to BNPP. An 8-year prior to BNPP, initiated prior to BNPP, nuclear plant in Tennessee called the Watts Bar 2 nuclear power plant, which was only 60% complete in the 80s, was mothballed. And in 2007, they decided that the Tennessee Valley Authority decided, well, let's finish this plant and run it. So it was finished, and in 2016, it was commissioned, and the US NRC gave it a 40-year operating license. It is entitled to 2 20-year extensions for a total operating lifetime of 80 years. It is America's newest nuclear power plant, but it has technology that is behind the technology. I mean, not as modern as the technology of our own BNPP. That's to give you perspective. A nuclear plant ages because its reactor pressure vessel, a vessel that is 1 foot thick of steel, gets embrittled by neutron bombardment. Our Bataan nuclear power plant hasn't seen a single neutron. So it is brand new. Actually, a nuclear plant becomes brand new on the day of its commissioning. It has never been commissioned.
Thank you. So we have a possibility of 80 more years.
The quotation of the Koreans is 1.15 billion US dollars to commission BNPP, which will take 4 years. Just to give you a comparison, the VVER 1200s being sold by Rosatom, like the ones they sold two 1200 megawatt units to Bangladesh, and it's about 60% complete now, cost $6+ billion each. So for the size of BNPP, that's about 3.7 billion US dollars. So for 1.15 billion dollars, BNPP is a bargain.
Yeah, question, Mr. Sarah?
Yes, Mr. Cojuangco. You gave a good presentation on radiation of existing solar plant, or excuse me, nuclear plants. My question is, if you were to build a new nuclear plant in the Philippines, where would it go other than your BNPP? And second, how would you handle the nuclear waste issue?
Depends on what grid you want to set it up for. No, if it's the Luzon grid, which is our biggest grid, I think our biggest plant, our biggest single plant is the 1,000 megawatt Sual coal plant. No, so we already have experience running 1,000 megawatts. So a VVER 1200 might do in the Luzon grid, but it would be way too big for the Visayas or Mindanao grid. But then there's a whole new generation of SMRs coming, which are only 60 megawatts per module. They don't need RCPs, reactor coolant pumps at all. They are completely convective. In other words, passive cooling. In other words, Fukushima proof. You can invest in them incrementally in 60 megawatt increments. You can have 12 modules per plant. So that's 720 megawatts. Would be ideal for Palawan, the Visayas, Mindanao, you name it, possible almost anywhere in the Philippines. As for nuclear waste, the chart that I showed you about the energy density also means that the waste is extremely tiny. No? We're talking about one Isuzu Elf every 18 months for a 620 megawatt plant, about the same for a 1 gigawatt plant. The entire Swiss nuclear waste for 7 reactors for 40 years. I visited that in Zuilag. I touched it. It will fit in half of this hall, right? So every year, every kilowatt hour, you contribute 0.1 US cents per kilowatt hour in a sinking fund for the waste disposal of the nuclear plant at the end of its life. That's billions of dollars at the end of its life. So to get rid of this amount in deep geological repositories, like for example, we are experts at geothermal. There are experts at fracking. They drill a hole 1 kilometer deep, 2 kilometer deep. They go horizontal. They put the fuel assemblies in metal containers which are friction welded, sent down there, backfilled with bentonite, and it's gone forever. No more spending, no more attention to it forever. It's gone forever. But why? Why would you do that? When you are only extracting 2 to 3% of the potential energy in spent nuclear fuel. Spent nuclear fuel from today's light water reactors has 30 to 50 times reuse potential in generation 4 reactors, which is like the reactors Bill Gates is trying to build. So it's a great national wealth. Why are we looking at it as something that we should be afraid of? It should be backed. It is an insoluble solid. It's encased in metal. It is encased in dry cask. It is managed. It is internationally audited by the IAEA because they're scared of proliferation. Well, needlessly scared. I have opinions on that. So why? Why are we so scared of it?
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Yes. Table number 2.
Question is for Congressman Mark. Yeah. We know that the design of the facility was way back 1980s, and you're talking about commissioning in the order of billions of dollars. Would that include determining the integrity of the structure, considering it's already 3 decades? Would you consider also in that commissioning the piping and all the appurtenances related to running the power plant?
Commissioning involves validation, which means that the nuclear plant, before it is commissioned, has to conform to its certified design. You cannot change the design of a nuclear plant without loop. So you go over every pipe, every piece of steel. Let's say this pipe in the plan, it says 12 inches diameter, 1 inch thick, made of 4140 steel. You go to that pipe, yes, 1 foot diameter, validated. 1 inch thick, yes, validated. It's only mild steel. Cross it out. How much to replace this with what we need to put here? If you total all of that and it's $1.15 billion, go for it. If it's more than $1.15 billion in my bill, scrap it. That's the way I looked at it. Why did I pick $1.1 billion, $1.15 billion? It's about the same price as a brand new greenfields coal plant, which will use the amount of coal I said, which will spew the amount of pollution I said, which will have the coal ash I said, and which will require the yearly foreign exchange expenditure to import all that fuel. So the nuclear plant for the same price is a bargain.
Okay, the next question would be the geological setting. Again, it was addressed or evaluated during the time that the stage or the data that we have on the area. And now we're looking at the last 3 decades, we have occurrences of hidden fault and everything, and in fact there is Subic Bay fault, something that traverses near the structure.
It's a pity that Kaloy Arcilla isn't here, because he was formerly the head of NICS, and he's much more credible to speak on this than I am. But I can tell you that Daiichi was built with a seismic design basis of 0.18 G, and it survived a 9 earthquake without problem. It shut down automatically. What did it in was the tsunami, which drowned its generators. There has been no 9 earthquake ever in the Philippines. Now, BNPP is built to a seismic design basis of 0.4 G, which means it's, 10 times stronger than Daiichi. So I can tell you right now, and I couldn't tell you this before because I had no basis, I can tell you that BNPP will survive with flying colors a 9 earthquake, and probably a lot stronger than a 9 earthquake, which I could not tell you before. Also, I can tell you that BNPP would not even get wet. Its front street would not even get wet if the same height tsunami hit Morong, because it's 19 meters above sea level, and the tsunami which hit Daiichi is 15 meters above sea level. And its generators are not in the basement.
Okay, thank you. Just a funny comment. In the NSCP, we're actually doing now a 0.65 G instead of 0.4. So probably you have to look at 0.4 as a design, and now the current 0.65 G. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions from the floor? I think we have time for about maybe 1 or 2 more. No more? It's a Friday, the booze hasn't poured yet. Okay. I might have a question for you. It's MICC related, it's okay? All right. What's the current view on open pit mining? I mean, don't give me, I know there's been declaration that it's banned, but do you think there's any hope that it could go the other way?
Well, on open pit mining, the MICC actually had a study done. They got experts. I think even CP David was part of that study. Essentially, it says that it's actually a safer form of mining, because for certain mineral deposits that are, it's not, you disregard the economics of it, it's actually safer than underground mining. And the reports, the experts have given the report. They submitted to the MICC, I think, more than a year ago, and it's been endorsed to the Office of the President, to the Office of the President and the Secretary of the DNR. And so, yeah, it's there, but it's now up for the DNR, for me, to push that, that it be revisited, that the previous department order be revisited.
Oh, that's going to be my favorite 4-letter word, push. We're about to, or have we created that cabinet position of Secretary of Water? It's there, right? Or it will be of water. Oh, it's still okay. So we all know we're challenged by the water problem that soon we will run out. Have you ever considered that every open pit mine could end up a water reservoir for free. If we say, mine, you want to do an open pit, you have to remember you have a fund to rehabilitate what you do. Can you not deliver to us a world-class water reservoir at your cost for us giving you permission to do the open pit mine to provide a source of water? I mean, it's like a no-brainer, no?
That's a very good idea. But the problems are your mines are there in some isolated place, so you'll have an issue of delivery. Yes, but you know, it's how many kilometers away from. But I'm sure it's a good use. You know, it's there, and it's a natural. It will be a natural storage facility. Yes, that's a very good idea.
Yeah, but let's look at Tampakan. How far away is that from civilization? I don't think it's far. Yeah. Anyway, just a thought, and I think it's a thought we should be kicking around a lot. It's for free. The taxpayer will not pay for that water reservoir. So if we had 4 or 5 open pit mines going on, we would be getting delivery of 4 or 5 water reservoirs, sizable ones, over the next 100 years. You know.
If at all, you just need to build a tunnel to be able to deliver it to some water treatment facility.
Okay, that's put in. Can you go to the MICC? Can you put it on the agenda and get some scientists to comment on it? Yeah. Any more questions from the floor? None? Yes, Roger.
I have a follow-up question on the issue of the EITI and how the NGO networks that aren't very keen on mining, are they giving you the benefit of the doubt on the results of the EITI reports?
Oh, as a matter of fact, they buy into their source because it's a joint reconciliation that we do. So the one principally involved is the NGO called Bantay Kita, and that is their advocacy. And when we do the reconciliation, they actively participate and they are happy with the final report. They are. Okay. No, you have to classify. No, you have to classify certain NGOs. There are those that are really opposed to mining. You know, you can debate for days on end, weeks on end, and they're just philosophically they are against mining. So you can't do anything about that. There are those that are, you know, in the middle of the road. Those you can convince. There are those that I think recognize the value of mining, but they want more transparency. And I believe those that we are engaged with, which is Bantay Kita, I believe they're fairly professional, and they're composed actually of academics and essentially academics. And so we have healthy discussion, but in the end, everyone signs off, all government, industry, and civil CSOs, we all sign off on the report.
Any questions?
Even the grammar, they sign off.
Any more questions? Yes.
Yeah, Usec Agabin, this is Enrique Fernandez from Eramin Minerals. We are one of the mining companies that was ordered closed by the former secretary. The MICC has conducted already its audit, and the audit findings have come out for some time already. But a number of us have not found closure despite the results of the audit. And we were wondering what is the government going to do regarding the audit findings. I mean, we expected that those who would have passed the audit would have been allowed to operate and have the closure lifted officially. And those who have not been those who have failed, well, maybe they can still appeal their cases. But the point is, we have no closure, and I think we are in for some of us, we are in a quandary as to how to proceed, how to plan long term, what to tell our employees, especially it's coming Christmas time, and we want to get your opinion.
That's a valid concern. In fact, several companies have already raised that. Now, what we have to understand is the report of the MICC is recommendatory. Okay? It is recommendatory. In the end, the body that will decide whether the suspension or the cancellation, suspension will be lifted or cancellation will be reversed, is the body where you filed your appeal or motion for reconsideration. So I understand some mining companies filed a motion for reconsideration with the DNR, and so that is the proper authority that can rule on the suspension or cancellation. Some mining companies opted to go to the Office of the President, and so that is the body that will decide. The report of the MICC, we've submitted it to both the DNR and the Office of the President, and the idea is, they will take the report in consideration when they make their decision. So again, the audit is recommendatory. In the end, the final authority is that with the DNR, if you file the motion for recall, or the Office of the President, if you file an appeal.
We addressed this question at the last mining conference. I raised the question with the Usec. And I said, the audit results have been with the Office of the President for 18 months. So I asked her, I said, Usec, do you think there is expertise or experience in the Office of the President that knows how to read that report? Because the day before she said, it's recommendatory, it's already in the Office of the President, we have nothing to do with it. And then she said, the second day was, well, you can come to us. And if the story you tell us merits action, we will then submit a recommendation to the Office of the President to enable it to act on the appeal, because obviously they have the technical capability. Now, for the longest time, the audit reports were not given to the mining companies. So they don't know exactly what's wrong with them, right? Or what's sitting in the Office of the President. And so they've been going to the DNR. The DNR says, I'm sorry, it's with the Office of the President. We cannot talk to you. And we are not going to give you a copy because according to the data privacy law, there are certain information that was supplied to the audit that is private. So we can't give you a copy. So you got a mining company stuck, doesn't know what to do, has no copy of the report. It's in the Office of the President, which is effectively a black hole, right? And for the 18 months, the DNR has said, we cannot help you, it's in the Office of the President. Then I asked, does the Office of the President know how to read that report? And she said, well, maybe you can come to us and we will talk about, that's 18 months, right? So this is the exasperation of the mining industry. So it's in a black hole. So something I hope can be done through the MICC to shed some light and help the guys at the Office of the President understand the report and get, at the end of the day, I said, well, therefore, Usec, you're meaning to say that the buck actually stops with you. So it's no longer, don't come to us, we can't help you, but we're here, we can help you. Thank you, that was the opposite report from what she gave the day before. So that's the exasperation. I hope, because you're part of the MICC, that now you see the foibles of that process. So when you said, it's now with the Office of the President, I remember very clearly what she was telling us on day 1 versus what she was telling us on day 2. So I arrived at the conclusion that if we hadn't raised that question, those reports would continue to be in a black hole called the Office of the President. And these companies like Airman who passed with flying colors. The audit, thanks to a report that came out, which by the way you confirmed was correct, you know, the scorecard. Passed, I think in Zambales, they were the highest scoring company, right? So what should they do now? I mean, you know, so if you could give us some guidance, it would be very helpful.
I have a suggestion, but don't quote me. You know, we have a new law. It's called Ease of Doing Business, ARTA. You know, you classify functions. You know, easy, medium, difficult, and you know, government agencies are given a certain number of days to act on certain matters. Okay, but it's up to you to calibrate the tenor of your ARTA demand letter. That's one. Second, maybe as an industry, you can write to the president or maybe to the. I suggest you write it direct to the president, raising these concerns. The third, you know, you can address it also to the MICC, but the most we can do is refer it as well to the president. So might as well go direct to the president. You know, that's how I see. You can get those cases moving.
Well, thanks, but when the president receives that letter, somebody's got to explain it to him. I hope the MICC and its legal arm can help do that. Okay, one more question before we close. Anyone? Comment? Yes, Stephen Lloyd.
Hey guys, how's everything? Stephen Lloyd, MMDD. Our company, we do aggregates mainly, sand, gravel, across the board. Our side of the industry has seen the same thing. Metals, I've seen. The past 3 years, everything's just been killed. But this needs to be addressed. You have enough people around that will help. Is there a way that the industries can directly deal with the MICC to help make guidelines? Our particular area of expertise is dredging and river rehabilitation jobs. And we found that we actually, once the government starts listening, you have a lot of good people who want to do the right things, but exactly what you said earlier, there's nobody that understands how to read it and then go to the implementation side. You have those people in this room. We're quite happy to help, but the MICC would be the proper body that could unite all these people and coordinate it. And happy to help.
No, if you have concerns, then you can very well send it to the MICC. And yes, the advantage is that we're composed of several agencies. In fact, I think it's bigger than the cabinet. Sometimes it's difficult to get just a quorum, difficult to manage as well. But if there are concerns, we can address. Like, you know, we got one from a mining company. They got a UN report, you know, and so we're trying to help them. You know, we're trying to sort it out with them. But yeah, feel free to send your concerns to the MICC. But again, in the end, MICC is recommendatory. Okay, we'll probably have to refer it again to the DNR, which has the jurisdiction and authority to act on, you know, if it's a mining concern, it's them. But we can, and the advantage there is that the DNR sits there as well. Maybe we can prod them to act. But yeah, that's the reason why the MICC is there to address concerns not only of the mining industry but also of CSOs and other organizations.
Thank you. But I have just one more. What was it I was going to say? Can the MICC please direct the DNR loudly and clearly to give the reports to the companies? It's a catch-22. We're willing to help you if you come to us, but how do you know what help you need when they're not going to give you the report? You know, so.
This is my understanding. The way we did the audit is that we grouped them into 5, and so the report would be would cover 5 companies. If I remember correctly, we agreed to give copies to the concerned mining companies, but we had to separate the report so that, you know, you don't see the findings for the other companies. If memory serves me correct, correctly, I understand that was the agreement at the MICC that if they request, we can give them a copy, or we will have it redacted so that we can give a copy to the mining company concerned. But I'll have to double check on that.
Yeah, I think that has to be clear because it's been 18 months and people don't know that. Well, Undersecretary mentioned it. Well, we can give it out on a per case basis. Anyway, we're trying to understand. But if that could be confirmed, it makes a lot of sense. Just give the company its report, just itself, so they can do something. And companies that are with employees waiting for 18 months to know whether they're going to have a job or not after the new year. Oh, you know how hard it is to get people who understand mining and your engineers. How long can you keep them waiting? They're all going to go to Australia. We're going to lose them. It's very hard. So the longer the Philippine government keeps dribbling the ball with these mining companies, our assets will leave if they have not already gone. And now when we're ready to go, no more. We don't have our people. Yes, Stephen. Last question.
The biggest assets that you have, the biggest assets the country has is the people here that know how to do the jobs. They've already left. There's very few left. This is a bigger concern to everything with build, everything that revolves around the growth of the infrastructure of the country. Your technical experts have left, period.
Thanks very much, Bayani, because it's a very important concern, and I hope you can take it back with you, because these questions have to be answered, and I can feel for Mr. Fernandez. He's got a Christmas party coming up, and I'm sure he's worried whether that's going to be the last one he'll ever have. You know, and yet they passed with flying colors. Yeah, why? You know, okay. So on that note, I'd like to thank both our speakers who were very, very interesting. Congressman Mark Cojuangco, I think I'm already converted. And Usec Agabin, thank you for enlightening us on these issues that we have been going through and we've called the black hole. Well, it was given to me first. This is pyrite. I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely from the natural resources industry. You got the glass. You got this artificial stuff here. It's probably petroleum based. Yeah. So, Congressman, thank you very much for your time and your expertise. Thank you again. Another round of applause, please.